Hello! Happy Tuesday. Happy Snowmageddon out there for all of you who have had snow days. And happy snow to the farmers out here. We are back with Jordan Atwater and Cassandra Kennedy on Ag Attack. And Jordan has something to say first off about the snow.
So I think snow days are great. Joan just had their first snow day. I believe we're third snow day in school history, so we had classes canceled today. But I noticed a lot of things happening on Facebook back home. A lot of the farmers and ranchers down in the area, all of them made the comment that snow days are great, but snow days don't mean a day off for farmers, which I like to say is true, and I'd like to point out to maybe those of our audience that would be listening that maybe don't know that farmers, if you raise cattle or livestock, it's never a day off, especially in the snow. It's almost more work, because you have to bring the cattle in, you have to prep for these situations when you're calving, especially. You don't want a calf to be laying out in the snow, so you have to really think ahead and you have to go outside. So I remember back when I was younger, my parents or my brother getting up in the middle of the night and going out and checking on cattle in the middle of a snowstorm. I mean, you have to check constantly and things like that. So I wanted to make the comment that although the snow days are great, it's not always the best thing for farmers. It almost makes it more difficult. So keep in mind that while you're enjoying your snow day, also think about those farmers out there that are trekking through the snow to feed cattle and lambs and hogs.
Feed you.
To feed us. Yeah, exactly. No, it's something that's really important. I think sometimes we forget about that a lot, is where our food comes from and all the work and effort that gets put into it. And snow days, while they're great, like I'm enjoying my snow day today. Obviously, we just went sledding with friends a little bit ago. But I do think about my family and friends back home that are working on the farm and putting in the effort in the snow as well. So that was something I wanted to bring up kind of to start with. So
For sure. But we do have a more serious topic that we're so
Most
excited
definitely.
about. Jordan's talked to me a lot about this particular topic, so I'm excited to share with you the fact of genetically modified organisms.
Yep, GMOs. And it's a hot topic. I mean, it's kind of died off a little bit lately, but it's still one of those things that it's the unknown. And so you'll hear a lot of advertisements by companies like Chipotle and Subway now, and even Panera for a while. They talk about GMOs and how they don't support GMOs. Well, the thing is no one really understands what GMOs are to a point, unless if you've done studies and research on them.
Yeah,
So
Jimmy Fallon did like this clip where he went outside in Whole Foods market and he asked people coming through, like, would you ever buy GMOs? And they're like, no, no. And they're like, what does GMO stands for? And they're like, I don't know. Well, do you know what a GMO is? No.
Exactly, no. And that's what, it kind of scares me, to be completely honest, because you see these people that are going in, they're like, yeah, no GMOs, and they're like, let's start laws, you can't have all this, and I'm like, do you even know what they are? Like, do you know the purpose? Because a GMO is a genetically modified organism, which, if you think about it, the root of genetically modified organisms is crossbreeding. And that can go all the way back to Gregor Mendel when he crossbred plants to discover genetics. So let's be completely honest, it's not a horrible thing. Now, it's changed and it's advanced to where you can do gene splicing and you can change the genes a little bit more in plants. Like drought-resistant corn, things like that. You can have plants that are resistant to specific herbicides and pesticides, which only increases the yield, but people get scared when you go in and you start changing things that are not all natural. So the thing that we're going to talk about today, though, is these companies and the food industry using these tactics as a scare tactic to make consumers scared of what they're eating. And then therefore, there's this big push past that. So while they're increasing their marketing and their revenue, they're also making some drastic changes in what we could be doing in politics and lobbying. So just some background, though. So like we talked about genetically modified organisms, crossbreeding, things like that. There's a lot of studies done out there. The USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture, has done a study on GMOs. And these were kind of started way back in the 80s. So we've had GMOs around now for going on 30 years. So they've been around for quite a while. And we've gotten a lot of good out of them. We feed the world. I know I've said it last week and I'll say it again. We feed a lot of individuals. You can't go into a market and really find anything that's not, besides the organic stuff, that hasn't been touched by some type of genetically modified strain. And that's back to crossbreeding. I mean,
but like even isn't corn itself, if you were to get natural corn, it would be like the size of the palm of your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So there's different things. Like, it kind of depends on even what type of corn you're using. Like, people don't understand that it's not like every cornfield you see is the exact same kind of corn. Like, we plant white corn or popcorn, things like this. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the same as some other farmer's field because they have a different strand. They buy it from a different a seed production company, things like that. So it's not the same, but people are like, oh my gosh, this is like, it's got to be all natural. It's got to be all natural. And while organic farming, I give credit to that. That is probably one of the hardest things you can do because you have so many regulations, obviously. It's just interesting to see how people get scared when they don't know. And then that's where these companies come in with their advertising schemes because, like you said, people go in and, like with the Jimmy Fallon, kind of expose that entire problem. Mm-hmm. You go into a store and you ask people, do you know what a GMO is, if they would ever buy one. It's, it's like high fructose corn syrup. People are like, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And it's like, well, it is sugar. And in large quantities, yes. Anything can be bad for you in a large quantity. But people don't understand. They don't do the research behind it. They just follow those really glossy, glitzy advertising schemes. So the biggest problem for me, and I know I've talked to Cassandra about this many times, is Chipotle, which Chipotle has been having issues, obviously, with their food in the past just for other reasons. But I have to say, Chipotle, I will never eat Chipotle. I do not support Chipotle. The reason why when I first started not supporting Chipotle was because they didn't really support American agriculture. They did make a statement about 4 years ago, I want to say. I could be a little off on that date. They weren't buying beef from the States. They outsourced it to Australia, saying that the quality of beef that we have in here in the States and the way we produce our beef wasn't up to their standard. Now, I don't know about you. I would take a USDA standard, and people that have raised livestock before, have done the homework, the research on it. I would take those standards a little bit more seriously rather than Chipotle's standard of food. I mean,
like, if they don't believe, this is always what got me. They're getting their meat from Australia, but they don't believe in preservatives or like HMO. How do you get meat from Australia to America and
how fresh is it? Yeah, no,
maybe and that's why we got a coli.
And that's the thing. It's like really anything that's going through fast food is not fresh. Like if you think about farm fresh, straight from the table, like you're going straight to the butcher, taking maybe a steak that's 2 days old, 3 days old. I mean, that's as quick as you can get it, and then going out to your garden, plucking some greens, going out to the field and grabbing some sweet corn. That's gonna be your like farm fresh, your straight to the table type of meal. The advertising seems it's like, oh, we have fresh food. You have fresher food than maybe some other places you can claim, but not quite. But Chipotle, they stopped buying beef from the States, and I'm not sure now. They don't put out like where exactly they source their beef from. I've tried to look for things and where they exactly get their beef now. They may have changed their stance on that, but there for a while they weren't supporting American agriculture. And as a person who has grown up on a farm and who really cares about the American farmer lifestyle, I was like, well, if you can't support me, I'm not going to support you. You call yourself an American industry, you believe in the American lifestyle, but yet you're not supporting American small business, like small producers.
And besides, Qdoba's way better anyway. So.
Oh, yeah, no, hey, yeah. I love Qdoba. I'll go eat at Qdoba anytime. So I just decided that I wasn't going to support Chipotle. Well, then you see, they were the first ones to start this whole GMO trend, and they are proud of that. They even say on their website they are the first franchise in the country that did the GM Over It campaign, where they were not going to serve GMO-containing foods because they believe in the quality of their food, which I also think is a little hypocritical because they've had an E. coli outbreak, and I know they've really tried to change things, but if they really cared about the quality of their food, that doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't correlate for me. So they made this GMO campaign where they told people we're GM over it. We're not going to have it. Well, truth to be told, they weren't. They still had GMO-containing products on their menu. Their chips, their drinks still had high fructose corn syrup, which we said that is a GMO containing from corn, high fructose corn syrup. It's been touched by GMOs. Let's be completely honest. And then they made the statement. So they got sued then. There was a lawsuit that came out. They were getting sued. And they made a comment that while they didn't actually say they were GMO free, just rather that they supported the idea. Now, when I hear the title GM over it, I'm assuming that you've already made that step. I don't know. I'm not a marketer.
Yeah, it's all advertising schemes.
It's all
to try to get you.
It's the smoke and mirrors thing again. It's just this play on consumers.
And the fact that, like, we're
just
in such
not
a
knowing.
health kick right now.
Exactly.
In America, and so that's why they're like, oh, we're going to tag onto this one.
Exactly. Well, and the thing that comes for this is, like, you think, okay, so Chipotle is the only group that's doing this. What's the big deal? No, it's not just Chipotle. You're seeing groups like Subway, which, huge advertising. I mean, athletes sponsor this. Everyone knows about Subway. There's a Subway almost in every city now. I mean, it's becoming like the healthy McDonald's, basically. They jumped on board too, saying that they were going to go, GMO free, they were going to go antibiotic free and things like that. And one of the interesting statements was done by Dennis Cabby. He was the executive vice president of Subway for the Independent Purchasing Cooperative. He made a statement that today's consumers are ever more mindful of what they are eating, and we've been making changes to address what they're looking for. So I guess I read a little bit more into that statement. When I read that statement, I was like, so you're really looking at consumers. Yes, we are in a health conscious stage, but instead of really doing the research, you're picking two things that are unknown for your consumers. You're not even educating your consumers on it. You're just now using the marketing tactics. And maybe it's just me, but if I was a business owner and I was a restaurant owner, I would inform my customers, like, hey, this is the reason why we're going GMO free. This is the research behind it. They say they have research behind it, but they won't publish any of that research. They won't say any articles where they've gotten it from. They just say that the genetic engineers have said that GMOs are dangerous. Well, give us the names.
Yeah.
Like, give us some type of background on this. You can't just make these blatant statements and not back them up. If you could back them up with some research, and this is the science in me, I would respect that a whole heck of a lot more than you just making a statement and then not even following up with it. And then it's just like going back to Chipotle. You make this comment about you're GM over it, but you're not GM over it. So then what else are you lying about? Or is this whole thing just a scam? If you can lie about not really being GMO free, then are GMOs that bad? I mean, I look at that, when someone lies, I kind of then take everything else they say with a grain of salt. So is that really the truth? So
yeah, are they really E. coli free right now?
Yeah, well, and yeah, so the CDC has come out and said that they're E. coli free, and it's like, I hope so. I know for sure. I'm just glad I don't eat at Chipotle. I never put myself at risk like that, So it's crazy to me, though, that they use these schemes, but then the consumers just jump on board. And that's where it hurts.
And we're back with Ag Attack and Jordan Atwater here. We're in a heated discussion about GMOs and genetically modified organisms, if you did not know what that was. We just talked a lot about Chipotle and Subway and how they're on this whole marketing kick for GMOs. But do they really know what GMOs are? Do they actually really care?
Exactly.
And now, what about the consumers? Do the consumers really care?
The consumers, well, they care, first off, because they care about their health. But I don't think they really care beyond that first initial step of just a company saying that, oh, we're GM over it. And maybe they don't. Maybe they just genuinely like the food. I mean, I like Subway sandwiches. I can say I've eaten Subway before.
Chipotle's all right.
Chipotle's all right. I've had a Chipotle meal. I really had to grit my teeth when we got it. I know I was with Cassandra when that happened, but it was the only place that we could grab food at the time. But the consumers have a lot of power in this industry. But you have to be an informed consumer when you're making these decisions. And if you're supporting that because you like the food, I can't get mad at you for that. That's okay. If you enjoy their food, I know they probably have good food. Hey, if that's what you like to eat, that's fine. Now, if you're supporting it, though, because they're GMO free, I would really ask you, do you know what their stance is?
Like, if you go to Chipotle over Qdoba, just because Chipotle says they're GMO free, like, I worked at Qdoba for 4 years, so I kind of have some insider information. And I can tell you that at Qdoba, we literally cook everything fresh. Like, we get it, we cook it in the line. We hand make our guacamole. We hand make our salsas.
Yeah.
And Chipotle, little known fact, was, at the time I was employed, was owned by McDonald's. And so they worked with that food chain, and instead they got a lot of their food prepackaged. They got it more.
Exactly.
It's not as fresh, and therefore I question the whole idea of like, oh, it's healthier for you because just because it's GMO free. Like, I would say that Qdoba is actually rather healthier for you.
Well, and I would totally agree with that. And it just comes back to the consumers. Do you know exactly what's happening? Have you done the research into it? And it's, if you go to, there's a website about GMO myths and truths. And it's definitely a proponent for anti-GMO meals.
Okay.
But the funny thing is that they're saying how these pro-GMO lobbyists have all these studies that show that GMOs are a risk. And that they've been cited that way, and that reviews are purportedly showing that GMO foods are safe on long-term animal study, but there's no substantiated evidence. Okay, coming back then at that, kind of that angle that you're attacking us is saying that, okay, there's studies there that are showing a risk. Okay, if anything, in great quantities, yes, can be a risk to your health. And I will say, we don't know the long-term effects of GMOs. They are relatively new. They were just, started in the 80s in the sense that when we've lately have done more of the genetic splicing and things like that, yes, it's relatively new. You can't we can't do studies, though, if you're going to just axe it out and say it's wrong. I mean, if you start saying those things and then farmers have to change the type of strands of corn that they're, producing and things like that, we'll never get those results. But you're getting scared because these companies are telling you it's wrong. But these companies have no evidence. Mm-hmm. So it's like this endless circle, this endless loop of nothing. There's nothing there. So even from the pro-GMO side, we have to do our part on getting these studies done and really putting in the effort. But, I mean, I've been eating corn and beef and animals that have been treated with antibiotics, things like that. And that's another topic that we'll get into tonight. All my life, I feel fine. I mean, I'm only 21 though, so I have a long, life left ahead of me, I hope. So I'm not really sure if it's, horrible, if something's bad's going to happen, but there are many other things out there besides GMOs that are leading to health risks. A lot of people are trying to make this correlation between obesity and GMOs. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, there are a lot of other things. I mean, lack of exercise in our country, the lack of nutrition awareness in our country, the lack of standards upheld by fast food companies. Those are the things that can be addressed for obesity. I don't think a GMO that is drought resistant or like that type of genetically modified organism of corn, it's causing you to become obese. Like, the reason why we genetically modify these organisms is to increase the yield, increase the amount of things. Now, I'm not saying that farmers aren't going back to more natural strains of corn and different products like that, but we do have to keep in mind that we still have to increase our production. Every single year, farmers are trying to increase their yield. They're trying to get the most for the product that they're having there so they can put it on the plate for consumers. The only way we can do that is to change the standard. I mean, if you look down, in Kansas and those areas, or out in western Nebraska, they don't get a lot of rain.
Yeah.
So their yields are going to be significantly smaller. Now, that's a large area of land that we have for production of corn and grains that's basically useless. Because if you don't use a drought-resistant type of breed of corn, it's just like we need water, so do plants. You have to make these different changes to our products so that you can have those yields and we can feed the country. If you don't do that, it's just like, getting on the topic of treating animals with antibiotics. So both Chipotle and Subway and Panera have made statements that they want antibiotic and growth hormone-free animals. Now, growth hormones are a little different than antibiotics. Growth hormones are to, again, increase the size. It increases the growth time, the growth period of the animal. So we have an increased demand for food in this country. We have an increased demand for protein in this country. They're making those changes. Growth hormones are decreasing the time that the animal needs to be in a feedlot so they're growing faster so then we can get a steak on the plate faster. Now, yes, there could be some risks with that. I can understand that. Some studies are being conducted right now. It'll be really interesting to see what those results are. But antibiotics, that's another thing. Antibiotics, it's just like what me or you would use for if we got sick. So you use antibiotics on animals. A lot of these companies, especially Subway, have made statements that they will never purchase meat that has been treated with an antibiotic. Okay, so
Where are you getting that?
Well, and that's the thing. They're going with these organic farmers. Animals can get sick all the time, and it's not like
most animals are born sick almost, aren't
well,
they?
yeah, when we calve and stuff, you give them different shots right when they're born because you want to prevent different types of things, scours, things like these that can actually kill that animal. So you have to prevent those things. Now, if we're not supposed to do that, we're not going to have the production of meat in this country. There's no way. You're going to sacrifice something. So I guess if we're all going to turn into vegetarians, okay. I personally like a good steak, so not okay with that.
Yeah.
But then they say, well, that's fine. Just give us the ones that aren't treated with antibiotics. Okay, well, if you're a producer, that animal is worth a value. You put money into that animal. You feed that animal. I mean, I showed cattle. You put a lot of money into that animal to feed it, to take care of it, to take it to the vet, to give it those antibiotics, to make it healthy. You put an investment in it, and you also really care for that animal. So when those animals get sick and you don't have antibiotics in a lot, so you imagine a lot with 20 cattle, one of them gets sick. If you aren't able to treat that animal right away, separate it, and give it antibiotics, you could have that whole entire herd, that 20 head of cattle, get sick. Because just like humans, cold, sickness spread. So antibiotics are a way to prevent that. So you treat that animal right away, you separate it, you quarantine it until it's healthy. Mm-hmm. But then that animal, according to our companies like Panera and Chipotle and Subway, has no purpose anymore because no one will buy it because everyone's scared that antibiotic that we used is somehow going to give them negative health effects. Okay, first off, antibiotics, just like a human, after a certain period of time, they go out of your body. It's natural physiology that you get rid of any type of after effects of antibiotics, medicines, things like that. So that's what producers have something called a withdrawal time. Any antibiotic that you give an animal has a withdrawal time. That means that animal cannot go to a slaughterhouse within that period. So let's say you give an animal an antibiotic, it has a 90-day withdrawal period. Mm-hmm. You can't slaughter that animal. You can't take it to market in those 90 days. Those 90 days have to pass, and most people even give it an extra 7 days after that. So then that animal before it goes to market. At that point, and research has been done, there's been the research to prove this is already out of the system. Research has been done, that animal should be free passed of all those antibiotics. So it's antibiotic free anyways. So now these companies are like, we only serve antibiotic free food. Well, you've already been serving antibiotic free food. Now what you really need to say is we're serving protein that's never been touched by growth hormones or antibiotics. You can't say antibiotic free. Everything that if every producer should be doing their part on this, and they do checks for these kind of things, is those animals they have a withdrawal period. You have to keep track and records of these things. So that's really important. Well, these companies, again, are marketing these things as a scare tactic. Mm-hmm. And that's where we start having issues because consumers are like, yeah, wow, Chipotle's really doing things. And then they start jumping on board and then increasing the revenue for that company, which it is an American industry. I do support that. But then you're giving those individuals more power and more of a voice in the wrong way, though. Yeah. So it's this never-ending cycle again. It's this smoke and mirrors of companies using those little tiny points that they know is just going to get under the skin of consumers, and they're going to take that as a ploy and a tactic and expose that.
That's scary because, to be honest, I would rather eat a cow who's been treated with antibiotics than a cow that's been sick, and then they're like, well, we think it's better now. So,
well, and that's the thing. It's just... It's so interesting, though, when they say these things. It's basically, some people could be like, well, yeah, the farmers don't have to use that animal then. And it's like, that's a waste of that animal then. Yeah. There's no purpose for that animal anymore. And it's not a pet. I'm sorry. Even though we care about these animals, they're not a pet anymore. These are animals that are used for a purpose. That purpose is to put it on a plate for a family. Mm-hmm. So that animal has no purpose. And, I'm not going to also at the same time watch one of my animals suffer out there being sick because, I need to let it heal naturally. Maybe that'll work, but I don't think so. Some of these sicknesses are deathly to animals without treatment. Yeah. But these companies don't understand that has an effect back on us. The farmers have to make a profit somehow. We would go out of business if we were, if we just, didn't treat our animals with antibiotics, they got sick, we don't have any animals anymore, have a pandemic of cattle dying from a disease. I don't know how that would happen or if that would happen, but worst case scenario. But it's like, oh, but you can do it. It's okay. But then also, they don't support any, like, they don't support funding for that. They're just asking for these changes, but not trying to help in any way.
Yeah.
And they say on their website that we're working with farmers.
Yeah, and then, like, consumers, that's obviously going to increase the price in whatever you buy.
Oh, exactly.
And then consumers are going to throw a fit, like, oh my gosh, why is this so expensive now? I'm not going to go there. Well, it's like, well, you supported this.
You support, exactly. And the thing is if you believe in it, you do the research, and you still support it, I can't get mad at you. You've done your work behind it. Just think about these things, though, before you just jump on this bandwagon of, like, I want all GMO-free stuff. Okay, well, then tell me what a GMO is. Mm-hmm. Tell me what foods are GMOs and how it contain GMOs, and then show me the work behind it, the paperwork that says GMOs are bad for you. And if you can do all that, I can be like, yeah, you've really done the work on it. I mean, I know that when I support something wholeheartedly, I do the research behind it. Now, if you like it because of the food, whatever. No stop
yeah, probably
there.
Still gonna go to Subway. Not gonna lie.
I'm not gonna lie. Panera is like one of my favorite places to eat. I love Panera, but they went antibiotic free with their chicken, and their stance was similar to what Subway was saying. They're like, we don't want any chickens treated with antibiotics. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting stance, and then they're saying they also went to the point where they said they were gonna, like, promote lobbying.
Oh.
For, like, farmers to change the way they do things, and that's when I had to boycott Panera for a while. I mean, like, I told my brother, I was like, I'm not gonna eat Panera. I can't even go in the store. I was so sad though. I was like, then I was just like craving Panera all the time because it's like their food's really good, guys. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. And so I was just like, no, I can't support them like this. Like, this is terrible and stuff. And then I actually even wrote a letter on Facebook to the Panera organization when I was in high school about it because I was just really upset by a company, the food I really love.
Yeah, that you're already a loyal customer to.
Exactly. I'm already a loyal customer, and I was like, can you say why you're doing this? Like, you're saying you're doing this, and you're saying because it's for your customer, but again, you're not having anything to back it up. Yeah. So can you please, and then I'm not saying I was the one that changed it because there was many other people that were writing these things that are kind of ag advocates like myself, and they changed their stance about 6 months later. They said, we're doing research into this, and they're still antibiotic free. They have natural chicken. They're still that way, but they've done the work behind it, which I can respect more. And they try to inform their customers a little bit better. Chipotle has done a better job at trying to inform their customers. They're now coming up with websites, but that's because there's been such a backlash from the community, and because they're getting sued over being GM over it when they're not GM over it. Yeah. I'm GM over Chipotle. So. Right.
And we're back here on KDNE 91.9. With Ag Attack. Jordan Atwater is telling us all about GMOs and why we should support it instead of get behind these companies like Chipotle and Subway who are really anti-GMOs, but they have nothing really to back it or really talk about it. So what about some companies that kind of support GMOs?
Now, there's not a lot of companies that'll just out and out say that we support GMOs. But here's the type of companies that still have GMO containing products on their lines. And you're going to be familiar with a lot of these: Coca-Cola, Kraft, Nestle, Kellogg, Nabisco, Hershey, Lifesaver, Quaker, Pepperidge Farms, Campbell's, Frito-Lay, Hostess. I mean...
And what's really interesting about that is half the companies you just listed are international.
Exactly.
And so, like, it's not even just America Farms, like, you know? Like...
It's well, and that's when I was in Germany this past summer, I was trying to explain this to a lot of my friends that were, you know, from Germany and from the UK, and we were talking about it, and they're like, well, yeah, what is this? You know, you guys have such a press by your food industry that you should go healthy, yet you still have the highest risk of obesity in your nation in comparison to everyone else and decreased life outcome aspects. And I said, well, you know, we start pushing for the wrong things. We don't understand that we should be informing consumers more so than just saying, like, blatantly don't support GMOs and things like that. And it's a little crazy to me. I mean, Betty Crocker on here, who produces a lot of food out there, like, I love those chicken pot pies. That chicken is not antibiotic free chicken, I'm guaranteeing. I don't think they've come out with that statement yet. And so these companies, while they haven't out and out just said that they're GMO supporters, they still have GMO containing products in their food. So you have just a small cohort of food companies like Chipotle and Subway and even Panera and other companies that are saying they're GMO free and they're going all natural, organic. But they're getting they have a huge platform.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crazy thing is there's just these small few groups that have they have fancy advertising, and they're really spreading the word about this, which, hey, good for you that you can you have that strong of a reach and you can really talk to people about this. But it's not quite
your consequences.
Yeah, they don't understand, and consumers at the same time that don't do their research, don't understand the repercussions that come back on the farming community, and then change the outcome of what your food is.
Like, it will change everything. Like, they don't realize how, if you change anything with farming, it's going to change this country drastically. Like,
exactly.
If the Midwest goes through a drought, you're going to notice a high spike in your food that you're going to start buying, in every aspect of your food, not just your general groceries, but like what goes into everything.
Exactly. Well, and this increase for demand for like GMO-free, antibiotic-free, farmers respond to that. Yeah. Regardless of what you say, we are in a business where we want to make a profit.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But we do answer to whatever our consumers are really saying. And the thing is when you have these consumers that aren't really doing their research and they're making all these pushes and really pushing for it, and then you have the backing of Chipotle and these groups that have the funding and they can do the lobbying aspects, it's hard to counteract that. Mm-hmm. And so farmers then are like, well, the only way for me to survive and my small family farm to survive is to go back to what the consumers are asking. That can have negative consequences as well. I mean, if you think about a farmer that's, okay, so if people are against drought-resistant crops because it's a GMO,
yeah.
If there's a drought, I've lost that whole crop. I've lost profit. Now, that means that my family would be, and I mean, in general, a family would be struggling that year because you live off of your land and your profit that you're making.
For sure.
And we rely on the weather. We don't have, we're not a company that it depends on if it's a winter month and you need winter coats or not. It's very much dependent on the weather.
Like you said, today, even in the snow.
In the snow, there's something going on. I mean, a tornado can wipe out, a farm with equipment, and it could be devastating. You could be under the red for so long. Hailstorm. I had a friend that a couple years ago over in the Ravenna area, family farms, I mean, their entire crops, all of them, were completely wiped out by a horrible hailstorm. So they had to do cover crops. Now, they're not going to make as much profit as they would have if they had the corn there, but it was too late in the season to replant. And it was the perfect time to do a cover crop like turnips. Well, turnips are not a high demand quality product. So it's one of those things that's like, well, crap. Yeah, these people are really affected by the weather. Yet the consumers don't understand that they really do play a role in things. Yeah. And that's where I think for all of us ag advocates out there really have to make an effort to talk to people that are not from an ag-based community or don't have a lot of knowledge on it. And not saying go out and reprimand them for eating at Chipotle. That's not the way to do it. But just ask why they support Chipotle or why they support things like this. And then if they say, well, because they're GMO-free or they're antibiotic-free, ask them, have you done the research behind the company? Do they really follow that?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you're really about healthy living and healthy lifestyle, is everything that company, are they supporting everything? And maybe I'm that odd person that believes if you're going to say something, you're going to go full out for it. You don't just go halvesy.
I know, we talk about this with vegan.
Oh, exactly. If you're a vegan, if you're going to say you're a vegan, then that means, in my mind,
you have to look at everything.
You have to look at everything, and everything is animal byproduct free. Now, not everyone's that way, and I'm like, okay, so can you really call yourself a vegan? Or are you more like a vegetarian with other things cut out? More of a dietitian diet. I don't really know what to call it. And not a lot of people agree with that. But I think that if you're going to make a statement, you might as well back it on all fronts, because if not, it's pretty hypocritical.
For sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's just kind of, that's the crazy thing with your companies like Chipotle. While they are the problem, a lot of the problem still relies on the consumers as well. All of us.
Okay, so I do have one, I know I read a bit on it, and my friends who do support GMOs, they're kind of concerned with cancer. They think that GMOs might cause in the future, we'll start to see cancer. Yeah.
Okay. So that is a type of research. It's gonna we need at least 50 more years
Yeah.
to really discover that. And I'm not saying, like, it's kind of like you should put yourself at risk, like, but I personally don't think GMOs in your diet and consuming a GMO product is going to cause cancer. I have not seen any research that fully supports that because there hasn't been enough time lapsed from GMOs. Like, they're relatively new. There hasn't been enough time for that. What I would like to say, though, there are there's more causes that have a higher risk of causing cancer than that. I mean, it's just natural that we're getting older now. I'm going to go all sciencey on you. Your telomeres get shorter. You know, you have more genetic mutations that are getting passed down. You know, there are other causes. I mean, if you smoke or if you're in a community that has air pollution, things like this, those are probably going to put you at higher risk of cancer than GMOs,
Yeah, just
in my mind.
obese in general, because that can't that cause some cancer?
I think so, yeah. I'm
Like,
not really sure.
I feel like if you eat a lot of lard,
Yeah.
that's probably going to be more dangerous too.
Exactly.
And like in the 1950s, I don't know. This is always my thing. If you eat small quantities of it, if you're in small quantities of something, you're not going to die. Like,
well, we've had plenty of people, like, so far. We've had cross-pollination. We've had crossbreeding, which is, in my mind, a type of GMO. We've had that for ages now.
and nobody cared about it.
Nobody cared about it.
Yeah.
No one was like, oh my gosh, you're cross-pollinating, you're changing the gene.
That's my thing. Like, I don't understand how this can cause such a thing. Like, if you actually know the science behind changing a gene, it's not like you're really doing much. You're just aren't you
exactly.
just making something still naturally? It's
Yeah.
still growing naturally. It's still a natural process. You're just telling this gene to grow here instead of this gene.
Exactly. Well, and the thing that always blows my mind is this is a diet. This is food that you're putting through that's getting broken down, and specific nutrients are being taken. The splicing of that does not change the nutrients that you're getting out. The nutrients aren't being changed. A drought-resistant type of corn is not changing the amount of potassium
That's not
in
like
that
a
corn.
spray is going over this corn to make it drought resistant. It's literally just a gene change.
It's just a gene change. It's not anything more than that. And so it's not changing the chemical makeup of that organism.
Like, I mean, if you think of a baby who's going through in vitro fertilization,
Yeah.
like, that's not changing the baby. It's not changing the human. It's just, it could be a little bit more selective if you choose to do it that way.
Exactly. Well, and it's just changing the response to the environment.
Yeah.
And so when people are thinking, like, oh my gosh, it's going through my body and it's going to change, cancer is basically a mutation in a cell. I don't think a food is necessarily going to do that. I mean, I know, like, if you ate asbestos, yes, you will get cancer. Like, that's going to change your genetic makeup in a way that you could get cancer.
If you, eat plastic, or if you have those weird addictions where you drink gasoline, you might be concerned.
Well, yeah, and, like, smoking, things like that, tobacco. But those specifically, those carcinogens, yes. But a GMO, like, crossbreeding or a gene splicing and those are very small quantities that are actually in your food. I mean, in incremental parts. I mean, there's some things, yes, that additively may seem like it's a whole big GMO.
Yeah.
But it's not hurt you yet, and I don't think it's going to hurt you in the future. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I haven't done the research. I haven't been out in the field testing plots and testing diets of mouse and rats to figure this out. But in my honest opinion, I don't think it's that big of a concern. And, I guess maybe in the future I'll eat my words on that, but I'll stick by them because I really don't think that's a problem.
Then everybody in the United States basically will get cancer because it's very hard not to eat a meal and not have
I know. Well, and that just goes back to the lifestyle changes. I give vegans credit because that's a hard lifestyle.
That's an expensive lifestyle.
That's really hard. I mean, I was told recently that it's not that expensive of a lifestyle. I still can't wrap my head around it.
No, because I've tried to go vegetarian even.
Yeah.
And, just trying to buy, if I just bought fruits and vegetables,
yeah.
That is so expensive.
Well, it goes back to then, you have to have the dietary supplements and you're having to put all these things into your food. Okay, dietary supplements are not necessarily natural as well.
That's my thing. Dietary supplements are probably worse for you.
I know. So, but then they're saying they're, things that are, grown out of the ground naturally. It's not, the corn that you're eating or a GMO containing product is made in a test tube. Yes, the initial gene might be, but the actual product is not. It's still pretty natural in my mind.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, again, consumers make a difference, regardless if I think, it's just kind of like with voting and politics. People are like, one vote doesn't make a difference. No, you really do. And it's the same thing with consumers. You do make a difference when you start supporting these things without just blindly supporting it. That's just how I'm going to say it. You blindly support something, that group gets power, they start making changes, it affects then how we do what we do as farmers. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to affect how your food's going to come out. And then you're going to look back and be like, I wish I would have looked at the research. I wish I would have looked into it a little bit more.
And we're back with Ag Attack here on KDNE 91.9. We have Jordan Atwater, and we are talking about GMOs. If you're just catching up with us, quick rundown because we're almost over the show. But we've talked about Chipotle and how Subway and these companies blindly follow the genetically modified organism trend where they don't like it. They just assume it's wrong and it's unhealthy, and so they're trying to cut it out of our diets as Americans. And Jordan, as grew up on a farm, she's saying that's wrong. Like, you don't have any research to back that, and it's really hurting the farmers. So now we're asking, what can we do? What can we do to support American farms?
Well, there's a lot of regulations out there right now, obviously, with this push for natural foods and being healthy. There's a lot of support by the consumers for more regulation and more research behind it. So I think one of the things, and this would help both sides, is just supporting research in that sense, that when you see those bills that are for funding of research for food, for the FDA and for the USDA, support bills like that, because research can only add more information to what we need. And to do that research, you need the funding for it. And so when you see those kind of bills, make sure maybe look into it. What are they going to use? Like, what are they asking for with those funds? And what are they asking? What is the research going to be targeted for? But then supporting those bills, trying to get those bills pushed through so then that we can have these answers that everyone wants to know. I mean, I don't have all the answers with this GMO topic, but with research, we can find those answers. We just have to be able to fund it as well. Mm-hmm. And then also, there's groups that lobby against GMO research, or they lobby against even having GMOs. Before the research is even done, they'll lobby against it. And knowing that, we kind of have to do our part in speaking up against that. So a lot of that is doing self-research again. A lot of this is just diving into the material, and maybe it's not an interest for you, but if it's something you care about, get behind it and do the research on it and stuff. So if you go research into it and you see the groups like the EPA, the FDA, USDA that controls kind of all of the regulations on things, going and looking at what is our regulations for GMOs. We have legislature that's for GMO labeling, which not a bad thing. I mean, more people can be knowledgeable what's going into their foods, but at the same time, that does pose a risk of if you're labeling a food as a GMO, that product then maybe will not get purchased because people, again, are scared by the label GMO. And so they don't understand what it is. They won't purchase the product. That company decides to make a change. The producers for that company are then told that they have to make a change and that they won't get bought anything. And then that has repercussions in that fact. So a lot of it, the support factor that's going to come is doing your research on what a GMO is and then taking your stance. So while there isn't anything like you can write a letter to Congress or anything like that, there's not a lot of legislature or bills out there right now, but what we can do is just being more informed as consumers. Even though I live on a farm and this is something that I have researched, I still need to do continuous research. There's been still changes. Like Chipotle has changed their statement a little bit more on their antibiotic-free beef. They're now saying treat your animals responsibly if, they're still antibiotic-free, which is important in their stance on their marketing. But they've changed even their wording a bit, which is powerful in its own sense. The way that they have their words and how we use our words is important. So just doing the research on everything is what I think we can do more of. And then supporting funds for research to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's always a big thing is I know as a researcher, it's hard to get funds for research. And if you don't have the funds to do it, then you can't do that research. You can't find the answers to things. And that's the only way we make progress is by having by being able to do research on all fronts, I don't care if you're in the humanities, sciences, whatever you're doing, being able to conduct research and find answers for things only allows progress. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not the answer that we wanted in the long run, we found a way not to do something or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
And I heard, like, Bill Nye, he was against GMOs.
Oh, yeah, he was against GMOs, and now he's for, like, he's changed his stance. He's not against GMOs. I don't know, did he actually say, though, that he's a supporter of GMOs?
He didn't say he's a supporter. He just said that he, after reviewing the research, he can't say he's against.
Which is, again, like,
yeah,
like I said, you have to really, when you look at the research, the marketing behind it and those bold statements always tell you the half truth of everything. They say, oh, there's a risk. Well, yeah, there is a risk with everything. I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. But read into what that research is. And I know it's going to take some time, and there's a lot of jargon in there that may not make sense. But if you go straight to the results and you read the results, you'll find what it'll say. And a lot of the time, it's just they're going to say, right now, they don't know. This is what the results showed, and there's not really that many problems as of right now. Which the future, we don't know the future. We can't say what the future is. But that's how you're going to do your research. So just supporting it right now, like Bill Nye did, he did the research behind it, and he found that he can't really support that right now because there's not a lot of factual evidence behind it. Now, once they get factual evidence, we can readdress this topic, mm-hmm. I guess, in a way. So I think that's, yeah, be like Bill Nye, do your research.
Be like Bill Nye.
Be like Bill Nye, yeah.
Well, what do you think you want to talk about next week, Jordan?
So next week, I think I want to talk a little bit more about the programs that we offer mm-hmm. in the state for our young individuals to get involved with agriculture. Okay. A lot of individuals maybe don't think if they're from a town that they can get involved in ag. Mm-hmm. That if you're from a city or an urban area.
I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah, so I think I really want to talk about the avenues that you can get involved in ways like that. And so I'm going to do the research myself on what we have in our great state of Nebraska to be involved and for our youth to get involved in a way, even if they live in the city. So that's what we'll be talking about next week, which I'm really excited for. So
what were you involved in?
I was involved in FFA, which not a lot of schools have that. There's some schools that are more urban schools don't have FFA programs. I know some of the schools in the LPS don't have FFA, which is okay, but what other things then can we offer those students, or what can we do to make a change like that? So for me, it was FFA, but I was blessed to live in an area that had FFA. So,
all right, Jordan. Well, that's all for Ag Attack here on KDNE 91.9. Stay tuned for next week. You're gonna hear Jordan talk more passionately about all the things that she loves in agriculture, hence Ag Attack.